Photography is a moment, a fraction of a second, bingo, like that. But what was really important to me was that at this moment in my life, I'm reviewing everything, because I have a few big books for Thames and Hudson coming up that are unseen work kind of books.
Yeah.
And so I've been going through my resources, tens of thousands of pictures, and sort of rediscovering things, who I was when I was 25 or 30 or 35. And each of these phases of my life produced different, let's say, more agile works. And I was changing, and my subject matter changed, my attack changed. And it all happened slowly. So to kind of review them with you, to have a dialogue together, I mean, it was like the best kind of interaction, because it's exactly where I am in my life. So to have someone I trust come in and look with me and play, the hit game when something sparks some kind of interest, what a great basis for a show, because it seems like it's the right approach at the right time.
Well, I'm glad you think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was amazed at how you could recall every picture we looked at, and I mean, some of them are so long ago, and yet I felt like you were taken straight back to that moment in 1964 or whenever it was, and you could feel yourself on the street.
It's one of the surprises of photography, is that I think I have a photographic memory, but not about reading a book and remembering everything in the book, or reciting the poetry from 50 years ago. But when I look at a photograph, I'm instantly there. Yeah. I don't know what it is, but I recall the feeling of the day, or the season, or I know where it was taken. I understand who I was becoming at that time and how it fits into my own evolution. So it's sort of a thrilling way to engage with one's own work. So I was pleased, and I'm surprised. There was a picture over there that I thought, is that really interesting? And the more I looked at it, the better it got to me. It's that green pool picture in the countryside, and so many people cite that picture, how calming it is, and how pleasing it is, and how silent. And I'm thinking, wow, I kind of lost that connection to it. And when you selected it, I felt like, I got to give this another look. And it's really holding up incredibly well. And the grouping is beautiful. We'll talk about that maybe later on.
I mean, one of my other takeaways, Joel, which I'd love your insight on, really, clearly still just thrills you, looking at photographs, and how do you keep that up? Where does that come from?
Well,
because I think it's unusual.
I guess some people wear out or burn out, and they're not interested any longer, or maybe they didn't achieve what they wanted in the course of their life. But for me, these pictures are all a record of how phenomenal the world is, how unexpected it is, how tiny little bits of beauty are sometimes enough to hold a picture together, and that it's a constant reward if you pay attention to the world around you. And that's the job of a photographer, really. I'm not telling stories. I'm not a journalist or an editorial photographer. I don't think of it as fiction. It's reality, and reality is so surprising and refreshing and uplifting sometimes. It could be the tiniest little detail that sort of pings me into a conscious moment. And I probably, and I don't want to treat this as Zen Buddhism or anything, but most of the time we walk along in a kind of a dream state. We're going from point to point on the street. You have an errand or a meeting, or you're going for lunch. There's always a task involved. But if you're out with a camera in your hand and you're walking around, it's that license to see. And suddenly the way somebody runs her hand through her hair on the street, there's workmen with jackhammers, there's cranes, something swinging, and some woman runs her hand through her hair, and you see this moment of beauty, tender even, in amidst all the chaos of modern life. And it's a signal about how vulnerable we are as human beings and how we are so personal. And I think that recording these fragments they add a kind of reassurance to me that humanity, all of its craziness, is still a wonder to me. Other people are just wondrous in their capacity for every human emotion. And so I think I light up when I'm in the streets. I'm rewarded by human behavior. I don't turn away from it. And so all these little notations, the way sunlight glints off somebody's bouffant hairdo, or the way sunglasses, throw a slash across somebody's face, or the texture of a wall. Small things are big enough to sustain a reach for a picture. It doesn't mean the picture is going to work or be of any interest. Many just fizzle out. But the collection continues, and every once in a while I'm restored. I look at a picture and I think, wow, I was really in touch with myself and the world on that day. I was conscious. And that's really all we could hope for, any of us, is moments of consciousness where we feel like we are present in the reality of our lives.
Yeah. Well, I think that comes across so powerfully looking through your archive, and it's very inspiring. But kind of taking that question a little bit further, I mean, there are certain pictures in this show and in your broader archive which almost defy belief that you were somehow able to capture that moment. There's the best example of that, I think, in this show for me is the picture of the guy yawning with the screen behind, where there's a cartoon figure matching his yawn. And, that is a sort of picture that comes out of the ether in a way that I can't explain. Again, not wanting to be too Zen Buddhist about this, as you've just described it. That said, do you feel some sort of instinctive connection to a moment as it's about to happen? I feel like you must do. It's a sort of sixth sense that presumably comes from years and years of experience, but I don't know where it comes from. But I'd love to hear you just talk about those, I don't know, 100, 200 or so moments in your archive that are pictures that defy belief like that, and how those moments felt for you when they happened. Is that?
Well, let's talk about that picture, because it is a kind of crazy beginning to that picture. I took my son to a movie theater in New York that was showing a lot of cartoons that day. I have my camera with me, as always, and we come into the theater. It's dark in the theater, but I set my camera. I set my camera, because wherever I go, if I step into the shade on the shady side of the street, I set my camera. If I step into the sun, I set my camera, just in case something happened. And of course, this wasn't a digital camera, it was a film camera, so it's always ready, and so there I was, in the theater, and when we got up to leave, and I walked out of all the seats into the lobby area, and I walked past that guy, it happened in a split second. I just reached for my camera and I fired. I mean, I looked through it, I made the picture, but if I hadn't been ready, in other words, if my own discipline about always knowing where I am and making the right exposure, then I would have had to set the camera, the yawn would have faded, the picture on screen would have changed, because it was a cartoon. It was moving all the time. So the very fact that we left the theater, we came out into the lobby, and when I see that, if I hadn't been prepared, then I would have had to establish the exposure and everything, and it would have taken more time than that moment existed in.
Yeah.
So by being conscious of my appetite for photography, that I would set my camera to be in a dark room with my son, I don't know what I anticipated seeing there. I didn't think I'm going to make a picture of the screen or anything. So to walk out there and to feel confident that the camera was already set for just right, and the exposure is perfect. Yeah. It's a perfect exposure for an interior shot, And so I'm grateful for the kind of discipline that became part of my way of living my life,
Yeah.
so that I'm always prepared, because I don't think any photographer who's got values wants to say, oh, if I only had my camera, you know, or if I was only ready. But my camera's always cocked and ready. The focus is quick, so I quickly focused, and I was able to get him and the cartoon, which is really kind of crazy. Just did the right thing at the right time.
You did the right thing at the right time. That's one way of putting it. I still feel that there must be some magic in there somewhere, but
the magic is staying prepared, no matter where you are, by anticipating that there might be a moment when something unexpected is going to happen. And I think that preparation is at the heart of any of the famous photographers' works. When you look at Cartier-Bresson and think, how did he know? He was always in the right place at the right time.
Tell me then how on earth it is, Joel, that you are able to also take a picture like this, okay, which couldn't be more different. Behind us we've got this very, very subtle, beautiful interior, which, you know, compared to this highly, highly in the moment, fast-paced street situation you've just described, it literally couldn't be more different. And yet you seem to have a sense for that moment as well. How does that work? It seems to me that there's two different photographers there.
You're right, there are. So I have to take a little step back, but I think it'll be an interesting thing for anyone who sees this. At a certain point in the 70s, I knew from the pictures I was making, like the Camel Coats picture and others, that I wanted Kodachrome, this incredibly beautiful, very fine film. I knew that it could be blown up to 4 or 5 feet, and I wanted to make very big prints. And nobody would print large. The labs would do it, but no dealers in New York wanted to show it. Color was still marginalized. And I thought, wow, I have to do something with greater authority in color. And so I realized that I was going to have to get a larger format film that would make really beautiful, stately photographs that I could enlarge really big.
Okay.
And so I bought an 8x10-inch view camera because I wanted the definition and the description. And this is because John Charkovsky, who was at MoMA, had begun to say more regularly, all a camera does is describe what's in front of the photographer. And description is everything. And I thought, well, if description is everything, then I want a camera that describes everything exquisitely. And so I bought an 8x10-inch wooden view camera. So by working with that camera, which is totally different from a 35mm in your hand, this is on a big tripod with your head underneath a cloth, and you had to put the sheet of film in, and you had to make a time exposure. My entire being changed, speed. I went from, you know, dance, ballet, gestural stuff to kind of classical music. And so I began making slower photographs, and I had to learn how to feel my belief in what it was I was looking at, because they were simple things. They weren't about action on the streets. You know, this picket fence over here, you know, that interior over there, a doorway like this. These are really empty, slow spaces. And you have to feel, as an artist, you have to feel filled up by that emptiness or that simplicity. And only by really standing there and watching it and feeling the confidence grow, like, oh, I see what it is. You know, I felt the kind of, the way the light was bouncing around in there and the subtlety of it. I mean, it's not a guarantee of beauty, but when you make the frame, its emptiness is haunting and satisfying. And I think that's what happens. You get this indwelling sense that you're you put the camera in the right place. And it isn't quick like on the street. You look at it and then you move the camera a little bit and a little bit until you feel you're in, it all fits in every bit of that frame. So I think the clarification is much more profound working with a stand camera than it is when you're riffing on the street and you're moving quickly. You're never quite sure. You reach for it. But here, you're standing in front of it and you're much more articulate about what it is you're looking at. And, but that happens over time. It didn't happen immediately. It took me a few days to begin to feel the magnitude of the difference between the hand camera